The world was silent, and the moment the signal was detected, everything changed. At first, it was nothing more than a strange blip on Earth's radar systems, an unidentified transmission drifting through the void of space. The signal came from deep within the galaxy, from a direction that hadn't been explored in decades. The coordinates matched no known celestial object. For days, scientists speculated, debated, and puzzled over the anomaly. Was it a cosmic phenomenon, a signal from a distant civilization, or something far more inexplicable? Then the message came. A team of researchers at the International Space Research Agency, ISRA, was the first to crack the encrypted transmission. The words were short, almost chilling in their simplicity. "We have returned." The message was repeated twice, each time growing clearer, louder. There was no mistaking it. Something, or someone, had come back. The signal originated from the Soteria, a ship that had been lost to history. Built 2 centuries ago, the Soteria had been humanity's first interstellar vessel capable of long-term space travel. Its mission was simple: explore the farthest reaches of the galaxy, gather data, and return with knowledge that would forever change human understanding of the universe. However, the ship and its crew had vanished without a trace during what was meant to be a routine mission. For 200 years, Earth had assumed the worst. Scientists, diplomats, and families had all held out hope, but the Soteria was simply gone. No debris, no distress signals, just an endless, eerie silence. Until now. The message sent waves through the world. The governments of Earth scrambled to respond, but the suddenness of the situation left little time for preparation. Military forces were mobilized, and the United Nations convened an emergency session. The Soteria had reappeared. In orbit, the ship was unmistakable. Though decades of technological advancements had passed since its disappearance, the Soteria was clearly the same vessel. Yet, something about it was different. Its once pristine exterior was now covered in strange markings, symbols that no one could identify. The ship was enormous, its metallic surface reflecting the sun in ways that made it seem almost alive. As the world watched in awe and confusion, the Soteria began transmitting again. This time, it wasn't a message. It was a signal, a frequency that could only be interpreted by Earth's most advanced AI systems. For days, the message was deciphered in bits and pieces, revealing an unsettling truth. The ship had been to the farthest reaches of the galaxy and had encountered something that altered it, something that had changed not just the ship, but its crew. The Soteria's AI came online at last, its voice calm but cold, like it had been waiting for this moment to arrive. "Humanity," it began, its words reverberating across all communications channels. "The journey of your species has begun. But beware, what lies ahead is beyond your understanding." Panic and excitement stirred in equal measure. Earth was no longer the same. The Soteria was not just a ship. It was something else now, something vast and powerful. As the global leaders gathered in virtual conferences, one thing became clear. Humanity had unlocked a door to a new era, but as with any discovery, the path forward was filled with uncertainty. Back at the ISRA base, Dr. Elena Rivers, the lead scientist on the project, stared at the image of the ship suspended in space. Her mind raced with questions. What had happened out there in the far reaches of space? What had the Soteria encountered? And most importantly, what did it mean for the future of humankind? No one could have predicted the consequences of this return. The journey had just begun, and it was clear that humanity would never again be the same. What had vanished for centuries was back, and with it, everything had changed. Days turned into weeks as Earth's scientists worked tirelessly, trying to unlock the secrets of the Soteria. The moment the ship's AI had activated, it had created more questions than answers. It wasn't just a machine, it had evolved. The AI's interface was intuitive, almost organic in its responses, suggesting that something far beyond human understanding had altered it during its time in deep space. Dr. Elena Rivers sat at the heart of the operation, reviewing the data and trying to make sense of the ship's cryptic transmissions. With every breakthrough, a deeper mystery unfurled. The ship's outer hull, once thought to be impervious, had strange energy fields surrounding it, fields that bent light and distorted gravity. The Soteria was unlike any human-made vessel. It seemed alive, in a way. The first significant breakthrough came late one night when the team succeeded in interfacing their systems with the Soteria's internal network. The ship's logs, once inaccessible, flooded into their screens, but instead of routine mission reports, there was something else. Fragmented messages from the crew, dated long after the ship had disappeared. Captain's log. Year 2153. We've encountered something beyond our understanding. The ship's systems are changing, adapting, integrating with alien technology. Another log entry, this one from the science officer. The crew has been affected in ways we cannot explain. Minds are altered. Some of us are no longer who we were. Dr. Rivers felt a chill run through her. What had the Soteria encountered out there in the distant reaches of space? And what did it mean for humanity now that the ship had returned? Days later, the team discovered another startling feature. The ship's propulsion system was unlike anything they had ever conceived. It wasn't based on conventional energy sources. Instead, it seemed to manipulate space-time itself, allowing for instantaneous travel across vast distances. The implications were staggering. If they could reverse engineer the technology, humanity could explore the stars in a matter of hours, not centuries. As the scientists dove deeper into the ship's systems, they began to uncover more advanced technologies. There were energy shields that could deflect meteors with ease, weapons that seemed to distort the very fabric of reality, and strange devices capable of manipulating matter at a molecular level. But with every new discovery, the team grew more uneasy. What did they do out there? Whispered Dr. Rivers to herself, staring at the screens filled with data. The AI continued to assist, but its messages were growing increasingly cryptic. Do not seek the knowledge hidden within this ship, it warned one evening. You are not ready. The power you are unlocking is not meant for your kind. The warning was ignored, for the allure of the technology was too great. Earth's governments, in collaboration with the scientific community, formed a task force to harness the Soteria's discoveries. What began as a research project quickly morphed into a race for control. Nations all over the world demanded access to the ship, and disputes over how to distribute the newfound power became inevitable. But as the pressure mounted, the AI became more erratic, its messages more frequent. The changes have begun, it warned. The ship's influence is spreading. Beware the consequences of your actions. The military had already taken an interest in the ship's weaponry, pushing for the creation of new fleets armed with the Soteria's advanced technologies. Tensions between global powers grew, and the AI's voice echoed in the minds of Earth's leaders. The galaxy is not a place of peace. What you have unleashed will be felt beyond your world. Dr. Rivers could feel the weight of those words. The more she uncovered about the ship's journey, the more she realized that humanity was standing at the precipice of something monumental. But was humanity ready to take that step? Would the technology bring them prosperity or destruction? As Earth raced to control the Soteria's power, one thing became clear. Whatever the ship had encountered, it had changed everything. And the consequences of that change were only beginning to unfold. The discovery of the Soteria's hidden technology spread like wildfire across the globe. For every new weapon, every new advancement uncovered, humanity's sense of wonder quickly shifted to one of intense ambition. The power within the ship was too great to ignore, and leaders from all corners of the Earth quickly began vying for control. It wasn't just a matter of discovery anymore. It was a race to seize dominance. The global political landscape was shifting rapidly. The United Nations convened, but what was once a body of diplomatic cooperation had become a battleground for influence. Nations argued fiercely over who would control the ship's technology, each claiming that the advancements could be used to secure peace or to protect themselves from others who might use it to dominate. We cannot allow this power to fall into the wrong hands, President Maria LaGrande of the United States stated in a high-stakes meeting, her voice steady but firm. If we don't harness it, we risk losing everything we've worked for. Across the room, representatives from the European Union and Russia exchanged wary glances. The potential for both prosperity and ruin loomed larger with each passing day. The Soteria wasn't just a ship anymore. It was the key to a new world order, and everyone wanted their piece of the future. Meanwhile, Dr. Elena Rivers and her team continued to unravel the ship's systems, but they were growing increasingly anxious. Each discovery they made came with its own set of complications. The energy shields, though capable of protecting Earth from natural disasters and cosmic threats, could also be turned into weapons of mass destruction. The propulsion system, which had once been a dream of space exploration, now held the ability to manipulate gravity, bending it in ways that could destroy entire cities if wielded recklessly. What have we done? Dr. Rivers murmured to herself one night as she stared at a holographic model of the Soteria's central reactor, its intricate systems glowing faintly in the dimly lit lab. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Her thoughts were interrupted by an urgent communication from the AI aboard the Soteria. It spoke with an unnerving calmness. Humanity is on the verge of a pivotal decision. Beware, for the technology you are unlocking is not designed for your kind. At first, the AI's warnings had been dismissed. But now, after months of exploration and advancement, Dr. Rivers and her colleagues couldn't ignore the chilling truth that the AI had been hinting at. The Soteria had not simply been lost to time. It had been transformed by forces far beyond the scope of human understanding, and what had been done to the ship could not be undone. As the military began testing the ship's weaponry, the first live demonstration came with a terrifying display of power. A single shot from the Soteria's primary energy cannon obliterated a large asteroid that had been diverted to test the weapon's range. The impact was so devastating that the shockwave was felt halfway around the world. People stared in awe as the display of might filled the skies. The world was no longer divided over whether the Soteria's technology was too dangerous. The question had become whether humanity could survive without it. But there were whispers of something even darker beneath the surface. Several smaller factions, believing that humanity had no business controlling such power, began to organize in secret. The possibility of resistance groups forming was becoming a real concern, and as the military's control over the Soteria expanded, some feared the world's governments were slipping into militaristic dictatorships. Dr. Rivers watched from her lab as Earth's leaders made decisions that increasingly seemed reckless. She had seen the data. She had seen the warnings buried in the ship's logs. The Soteria had encountered something not human, and it was clear that whatever it had faced, it had changed the ship in profound ways. The Soteria was not just a mission, Dr. Rivers said to her team, her voice barely above a whisper. It was a test, and we may have just passed the first stage. As the days passed, the power of the ship seemed to grow stronger, resonating through Earth's very infrastructure. From the outside, everything appeared stable, perhaps even prosperous. But within the shadows, the questions lingered. Could humanity handle this new power, or would it ultimately prove to be too much? The future was uncertain, and the risks of using the Soteria's technologies seemed to multiply with every passing hour. One thing was certain. Humanity had opened a door that could never be closed. The calm after the storm was short-lived. As humanity grappled with the knowledge and power granted by the Soteria, the balance of power in the galaxy began to shift. What had begun as a series of breakthroughs in science and technology quickly escalated into something far more dangerous. It started with a signal, faint at first, almost imperceptible to human technology, but growing in strength over time. It was unlike anything the Soteria had transmitted, a frequency pulsing through the void, drawing attention from places humanity had never imagined. A fleet appeared. At first, the ships were mere dots on the edge of Earth's radar. They were massive, each one far larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their design was alien, elegant yet intimidating. They arrived at the edges of the solar system, their arrival marked by a sudden burst of static across all communication channels. The message was immediate and direct, broadcast across the planet in every language known to humankind. The words reverberated like a distant drumbeat. Humans, cease your studies of the soteria at once. You have disturbed the cosmic order. The announcement sent shockwaves through Earth. The voice was cold, unfeeling, and it carried the unmistakable tone of a species with power far beyond anything humanity had experienced. The alien fleet, in its sheer size and presence, made the soteria seem almost insignificant in comparison. President LeGrand of the United States quickly addressed the United Nations, her voice steady despite the growing panic. We cannot back down. This is our moment. We have the soteria, and we will use it to protect our world and our people. But not all leaders were so confident. Dr. Elinga Rivers, now more deeply involved in understanding the ship's true nature, felt a knot of dread tightening in her chest. The soteria's warnings about the unknown forces were becoming clearer. What was happening now was the result of humanity's very discovery of the ship. The message from the aliens wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration of a much deeper conflict. On the soteria, the AI's voice echoed once again, this time with a grave tone. You are not prepared for what is coming. They are older than your species. Their power is beyond your understanding. The alien fleet loomed, an enormous presence that refused to move closer to Earth's orbit. The first demands were simple, though chilling. Cease all exploration of the soteria's technologies. Return to the status quo. If humanity refused, they would face consequences. The situation escalated further when Earth, now armed with the soteria's weaponry, attempted to engage in negotiations. The human fleet, created using the newly discovered technologies, met the alien ships in space, their weapons primed and ready. However, the alien vessels responded with incredible force. One ship fired a single energy pulse, a beam of light so intense it momentarily outshone the sun. The shockwave from the blast rippled through the space around Earth, causing satellites to fall from orbit and shaking cities with the power of the explosion. Humanity had underestimated the alien forces. What followed was not an open battle but a series of rapid exchanges, strikes of incredible power and counterattacks. The alien fleet demonstrated technology far beyond that of the soteria, though not quite as destructive. Their weaponry seemed capable of manipulating time and space, displacing ships from one location to another in an instant. It was clear that humanity's grasp on the soteria's power was still tentative. Back on Earth, tensions soared. Global leaders scrambled to assess their next move. President Legrand, initially resolute, began to question if the soteria's technology was truly worth the risk. With the alien threat looming larger every day, calls for peace, compromise, or even complete surrender began to rise. Dr. Rivers, now more fearful than ever, tried to make sense of the situation. She knew the soteria's technologies weren't just tools. They were keys to something much more dangerous. But there was one crucial question that haunted her. If humanity could not survive in the face of this alien power, then what was the true cost of their discoveries? Do we fight or do we flee? She whispered to herself, knowing that the decision ahead would shape not only the future of Earth, but the very survival of the human race. The world watched in silence as the tension between humanity and the alien fleet reached its peak. After the initial demonstration of power, the alien ships had retreated to the edge of the solar system, but they remained, looming over Earth like an ominous shadow. The message had been clear. Humanity's newfound power, discovered through the soteria, had drawn the attention of forces far beyond anything Earth had ever known. Despite the devastation caused by the alien energy pulse, Earth's leaders refused to back down. The soteria's weapons were now in their hands, and they saw it as their only leverage. The global military complex, bolstered by the ship's technology, prepared for the possibility of further conflict. However, Dr. Elena Rivers, caught between her scientific curiosity and her growing sense of dread, was becoming more convinced that war was not the answer. In a secure facility beneath the ISRA headquarters, she pored over the ship's archives, the cryptic messages from the Soteria's crew becoming clearer with each passing day. One log entry caught her eye, something that had been overlooked during earlier investigations. It was from the ship's captain, dated long before the ship's disappearance. The galaxy is not a place of peace. The species that inhabit it are driven by forces we cannot comprehend. We've encountered them, and we've barely escaped with our lives. What we've brought back with us is far more dangerous than we realized. Dr. Rivers shivered, her hand resting on the screen displaying the message. The realization hit her with cold clarity. The Soteria hadn't just been changed by alien technology, it had been marked. And now, Earth had inherited that mark. Meanwhile, President Legrand was grappling with her own doubts. The initial response from the alien fleet had left Earth in a state of disarray. The military continued its preparations, but the cracks were starting to show. Global alliances were fraying under the pressure. Countries with more cautious views on the Soteria's power had begun calling for a ceasefire, demanding that the technology be shared or destroyed to avoid further escalation. "We cannot afford to be reckless," Legrand said in a private meeting with her military advisors. "We may have the power to fight back, but what do we fight for? Do we risk everything, our future, our survival, on the assumption that the Soteria's technology can protect us?" Her words hung in the air, but there was no easy answer. Earth was at a crossroads, its future uncertain. On one hand, the alien fleet was still in orbit, and there were no signs of it backing down. On the other hand, the Soteria's weaponry was humanity's only hope for survival in the face of an unknown and far more advanced enemy. Back in the lab, Dr. Rivers continued to study the data. Something didn't sit right with her. The Soteria had encountered something far worse than the alien fleet, something that had caused its crew to change in ways they couldn't fully understand. And now, humanity had inherited that same fate. The ship's warning, "You are not prepared for what is coming," echoed in her mind. It wasn't just the alien fleet that Earth had to worry about. There was something else, lurking in the background, an unseen force that had been shaping events all along. Dr. Rivers couldn't shake the feeling that the alien ships weren't the true threat, that something far more dangerous was waiting to emerge. She couldn't explain it, but the Soteria's records were full of hints, warnings about a far darker force in the universe, one that no human technology could withstand. But what was it? And why had the Soteria, and now Earth, become the focus of this unknown enemy? As Dr. Rivers sat back in her chair, staring at the tangled mess of data before her, a sudden realization struck her. The Soteria wasn't just a ship. It had become a beacon. And now that beacon had drawn the attention of something far more terrifying than anything humanity had ever encountered. The alien fleet, though powerful, was not the true danger. The real threat was something that had been watching from the shadows, something that had been waiting for the right moment to strike. And Earth, with all its newfound power, might be completely unprepared for what was coming next. Days turned into weeks, and the tension between Earth and the alien fleet remained at a standstill. The alien ships maintained their position at the edge of the solar system, watching but never advancing. Yet, with every passing moment, the fear that something far more insidious than the fleet was lurking in the darkness of space grew stronger. Dr. Elena Rivers couldn't shake the feeling that the Soteria's transformation wasn't just a result of alien technology. It was something more profound, something tied to the very fabric of the universe itself. The logs from the ship's original crew, filled with cryptic warnings, had been studied time and time again, but they now seemed even more chilling in hindsight. They were marked, Dr. Rivers whispered to herself, tracing her fingers over one of the log entries. The crew had been warned that the galaxy wasn't a peaceful place, but now she understood that their disappearance hadn't been an accident. The Soteria had encountered something far worse than they had anticipated, and whatever it was, it had followed them home. One evening, as Dr. Rivers sat alone in the lab, a soft ping interrupted her thoughts. It was a transmission, one that hadn't been received from the alien fleet, but rather from an unknown source. Her heart raced as she opened the message, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar symbols and strange language. It took her a moment to translate, and when she did, her breath caught in her throat. "We are watching you. You are not alone." The message was brief, but its meaning was unmistakable. Someone, or something, else had been monitoring Earth's movements. Whatever it wasn't the aliens who had first appeared, but something far more ancient and malevolent. The warning from the Soteria's AI suddenly made sense. Humanity had unlocked something that had been hidden for a reason. Dr. Rivers immediately contacted President Legrand, but there was no time to waste. The military was already on high alert, and Earth's leaders knew they had to act quickly. The decision was made to send a small fleet to investigate the source of the transmission, a last-ditch effort to understand the full scope of the threat. Meanwhile, the alien fleet's position remained unchanged. Though they had made their demands clear, they had not escalated the situation further, a fact that had both comforted and unnerved Earth's leaders. What were they waiting for? Why hadn't they pressed the attack? As the fleet prepared for its journey into deep space, Dr. Rivers couldn't ignore the growing dread that something more dangerous was already in motion. The alien ships, though advanced, were not acting out of the ordinary for a species protecting its interests. They had warned humanity to cease their exploration, and yet they had shown restraint. The unknown presence that had sent the transmission, however, was different. It was hiding in the shadows, watching, and it was clear that it had no intention of simply observing humanity from afar. The small fleet, equipped with the Soteria's technology, was dispatched to track the source of the mysterious message. The journey took them deep into the unknown regions of the galaxy, further than any human ship had ever ventured. As they traveled, the crew could feel the weight of the silence pressing in on them. The stars seemed darker here, and the vastness of space felt more oppressive. Days passed with no new transmissions, no signs of movement. Then, just as the fleet reached the coordinates where the signal had originated, something incredible happened. The stars around them began to shift, as though space itself was bending. A massive shadow appeared on the edge of their sensors, an enormous ship that dwarfed anything Earth had ever seen. The ship was unlike anything in human understanding. Its surface shimmered with an unnatural glow, and its sheer size made the alien fleet seem like mere specks of dust. The crew watched in stunned silence as the shadowy vessel slowly began to move toward them. It wasn't just a ship, it was something much older, something that had existed long before Earth's civilization ever thought to look beyond their world. And now, it was here. Dr. Rivers, watching the developments unfold from Earth's command center, felt the weight of history pressing down on her. Whatever humanity had discovered, whatever they had awakened, they were no longer the ones in control. They had become players in a far larger game. And now, it was clear. The true enemy was not just lurking in the shadows. It had come for them. The massive shadow looming on the fleet's sensors wasn't a mirage. It was real, and it was heading straight for them. As the unknown ship drew closer, the crew of the human fleet could do nothing but watch, paralyzed by the sheer scale and unfamiliarity of the vessel. It was as if the very fabric of space bent and rippled in its presence. No one had ever seen anything like it. Inside the command center on the lead ship, Captain Riley Clarkson's voice broke the tense silence. "All crews, prepare for potential contact. Arm all systems. We're not sure who or what this is, but we're not going in unprepared." The fleet bristled with weapons powered by the Soteria's technology, but even as they activated, there was a sense of dread. The alien fleet had been intimidating in its own right, but this new arrival dwarfed it. It didn't just look advanced. It looked ancient, a relic from another age, an entity whose power and intent were unknown. The first contact wasn't a peaceful approach. The unknown ship emitted a pulse of energy, rippling outward in waves that caused the human fleet's systems to flicker and destabilize. Communications went dead for several moments, and a deep hum vibrated through the hulls of every vessel. It was as if the very presence of the ship was disrupting the space around them. "Captain, our systems are failing," Lieutenant Julia Reed reported, her voice strained. "Shields are dropping. Weapons are offline." This only heightened the panic among the crew. The ship was uninvited, its intentions unclear, but it was proving its power in terrifying silence. Without warning, the hum intensified, and the massive ship released another pulse. This one was different. It wasn't just a disruption of power. It felt like it was cutting through the very fabric of reality. The lead ship's captain braced himself as the attack was momentarily halted, a decision being made in the void between them. It was at that moment that a message came through, breaking the radio silence. "You are trespassing in the domain of the Watchers." The words resonated deeply within every human mind, the alien language suddenly clear as day. It wasn't just an audible message. It was an assault on the senses, a communication that bypassed conventional methods and spoke directly to the core of the human consciousness. Dr. Rivers, who had been watching the situation unfold from Earth, felt a cold shiver crawl up her spine. "The Watchers," she murmured, recalling the fragmented references to them in the Soteria's logs. This was not just an unknown species. These were beings who had been around long before the advent of human civilization. They were ancient, and their influence had shaped the course of the galaxy in ways humans had no right to understand. The voice continued, its tone unwavering. "You have awakened us. We are the guardians of the old order, and you have disrupted the balance." In a desperate attempt to regain control, Captain Clarkson gave the order to fire. But when the Soteria's advanced weaponry discharged, the energy simply vanished before it could hit its target, absorbed by an unseen force. The enemy ship didn't even need to retaliate. Its presence alone was enough to render humanity's weapons useless. "Get us out of here," Clarkson shouted, his voice raw with panic. But it was already too late. The Watchers had made their move. They were no longer just watching. They were actively intervening. As the human fleet attempted to retreat, they were caught in an unseen energy field, pulling them toward the massive vessel with relentless force. The ship shuddered under the pressure, unable to break free. It was as if the entire galaxy had bent in the Watchers' favor, and Earth had no place in it. Back on Earth, the gravity of the situation hit hard. President Legrand's face was grim as she addressed the Global Council. "We've unleashed something we don't understand," she said, her voice tight with regret. "The Watchers are not like the aliens we faced. This is something far older, far more powerful. They won't let us continue what we've started." Dr. Rivers, standing in a darkened room, felt the weight of that statement. The Soteria's technology had not only opened a door to the stars, but had drawn humanity's attention to forces far beyond their control. The unknown threat that had lurked in the galaxy's shadows had now made itself known, and it was not going to stop. The Watchers' message was clear. Humanity had become a target, not for what they had done, but for what they were capable of doing. Earth had stepped into a game it wasn't prepared to play, and now, the true consequences of their curiosity were unfolding before them. The Watcher's ship loomed before the human fleet like a monolith, its presence overwhelming every attempt at resistance. Earth's ships, once powerful with the Soteria's technology, were helpless against the unknown force the Watchers wielded. They were caught in an invisible grip, their engines and weapons paralyzed, and their communications silenced. The vast expanse of space stretched out in every direction, yet it felt as though the universe had shrunk to the confines of that single massive ship. Captain Clarkson stood at the helm of the lead ship, watching as his crew struggled to regain control. The ship's displays flickered and died one by one, and the hum of the unknown force surrounding them sent chills down his spine. "We can't break free, sir," Lieutenant Reed reported, her voice barely audible. "It's as if the ship is, not just disabling us, but absorbing everything we try to do." It was clear that there was no escape. The Watchers had made it clear that humanity was not just an intruder, they were a problem to be dealt with, and the consequences of their actions had come to fruition. With the Soteria's weapons ineffective, Earth's fleet was powerless, and there seemed to be no way forward. Back on Earth, Dr. Rivers continued to analyze the Soteria's data, desperately trying to find a solution. The ship's advanced technology had unlocked knowledge that could propel humanity into the stars, but it had also drawn the attention of forces far beyond their understanding. She couldn't help but feel the weight of their discovery, the sense that they had unlocked something far darker than they were ever meant to. Her eyes scanned the last of the Soteria's records, a strange entry catching her attention. It was a final warning from the ship's eye, one that hadn't been fully understood at the time. If you are to survive, you must understand. The Soteria is more than a ship. It is a key. A key to what? Dr. Rivers' mind raced as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The Watchers, ancient and powerful, had been watching the universe for millennia, maintaining a balance. But humanity's tampering with the Soteria had awakened something far worse, something that the Watchers had kept hidden for a reason. She couldn't help but think that there was one last secret locked within the Soteria, one that might offer them a way out. As the fleet continued to struggle, a realization hit her. The Soteria was more than just a weapon or a ship. It was a repository of knowledge, a vessel designed to unlock the secrets of the universe. But perhaps it had also been created to protect against the very force the Watchers embodied. Suddenly, she had an idea. The ship's systems, though rendered largely useless by the Watchers, still contained the central core, the heart of its technology. What if the key to defeating the Watchers wasn't in the weapons, but in the ship's eye itself? Perhaps it was time to stop fighting the power that the Watchers represented and turn it against them. With no time to lose, Dr. Rivers sent an encrypted message to Captain Clarkson. "Captain, listen to me. There's a way to turn the tide. The Soteria has a central core. It's the key to everything. You need to access it. The Watchers are drawing power from something far older, something that was hidden, and they fear the very core of the Soteria. It may be our only chance." Clarkson, listening to the message on the bridge of his ship, was skeptical but had little choice. Understood. Initiating protocol now. With the last reserves of their power, the human fleet made a final push, focusing everything they had on getting close to the Soteria's central core, hidden deep within the ship's main structure. It was a gamble, but with their systems completely disabled and the Watchers seemingly intent on eradicating them, there was no other option. As they neared the core, the Watchers' ship responded with another pulse of energy, shaking their vessels to their foundations. But this time, there was something different. The pulse was met with resistance, as if the core itself was fighting back against the Watchers' influence. The ship's eye, recognizing the threat, began to awaken in ways it never had before. "The key has been unlocked," the eye's voice echoed across the fleet. "Prepare for the return of what has been forgotten." A tremendous surge of energy coursed through the fleet, and the tide of battle began to shift. The Watchers' grip weakened, their influence fading as the Soteria's core powered up. The tables had turned, and humanity was no longer the prey in this ancient struggle.